when you think about the students, and are there any sort of like specifics that like things that like you have about concerns, like not even, I know that we talked earlier about the maybe what to do if students don't do any work or don't want to do any work, but are there any specific like things that you want to say as like concerns that you have, Inda?
What do you mean by buy-in?
Oh, so like how to get them to how to get them to how do I say it actually, like how to get them to not to give pushback if they about like well, I don't actually know how I would describe buy-in, because it's like one of these, I'm going to look it up because I don't know how I would. Oh yeah, okay. This is a better definition than what I was going to say. So buy-in is like the acceptance and willingness to participate in something. So like acceptance and willingness to participate in the class. So the class and the IBL methods, because I think that that's the important part, because a lot of these IBL methods, the students just are used to, like how do you fight things about like what to do when students say things like, why aren't you teaching me, or why aren't you giving me the answers, right? Because I feel like I've heard
I typed something. Can you see what I typed? No?
No, that's weird. Let me see. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I don't know, because I don't see, where did you type it? What part of the screen? And
the one that you answer here.
Not there. Like, on these. On those. Yes. On this, because I have to show that part. Yeah. All right. Not having the confidence. So
how am I to write in there in your slide? I don't think I can do that.
Oh, well, it's okay. I can move all of these so that we can have it on this screen then. So are there any other things like, so concerns about not students not having the confidence? So maybe just the like how to overcome students.
Yeah, sometimes they don't have the confidence to just say whatever they have in mind, because they feel like they are being judged, and they do not want to say anything if they are not 100% sure that they have the correct answer. So always have to remind them that we are learning from the mistakes, so it's okay to make mistake. And
so just how to get students to realize it's okay to make mistakes. And then I think that one thing is just the and that's all of the fixed mindset versus like growth mindset issue. Like, does the student have the mindset of wanting to improve or not? So I think that's exactly it. So I'm gonna save this actually, because I know that I've been saving all of these. So let me clear this and then go back, because this is my issue, because I always hit the wrong button. But so then I think that the concerns I've heard from people are the revolt of the students, or what if like students decide to drop because they don't like the way the course is run, or things like that. And so the instructor sometimes like is worried about the immediate consequences to them. And so then this is actually the diagram that I really like to show the struggles that instructors have to face in terms of overcoming all these concerns with the students. And the math anxiety is just the tip of the iceberg. And then these are all of the other things here: stereotype threats, faster, smarter, only geniuses can understand, but mistakes are bad. So these are all of the things that I think that we've heard at least one student say that they've struggled with in the past, or something that has caused them to not be successful in their classes. And so how do we overcome those things? So that's what this is about today. So so I guess and you want to go through, there's actually 3 scenarios, and so we can go through them together, but I guess I'll give you a minute or so to read them, and then when you think of something, then just let me know.
Well, I probably would like to say that I have taught you something. You just didn't realize that you were actually learning there. I tried to introduce you to critical thinking, and you are already practicing it. Only you just do not realize it because I'm not feeding you up with that, but you are coming out on your own.
Yeah, so so I think that that's good. Like, in general, maybe, yeah, I like that. And like just point out to students, like point out to students, what is it? Point out to students the successes that they've already had throughout the class and the semester. I think that's actually good. And that's very good. And then
this has reminded me, one time I gave a students a problem and I asked them to work on that. by themselves, in the sense that they can talk to each other, but I'm not going to help them. And then they got the answer correctly, right? And then one student said that, oh, turned out I was better than I thought because I could solve this without your help. And I said, yeah, because you are forced now to listen to you instead of to me, and then you can find your answer.
Yep. And I think that one thing to specifically address the ever since elementary school thing that I usually tell students to do, and I tell every student to do this. I tell students to think of a time in your past that you like math and or had a success in math and just think of it as a happy moment, like a math happy math moment, and I found that like students really like that, because like for me that moment is like when my grandmother taught me about like fractions at her kitchen table by cutting up a piece of fruit, and so I think that everyone has that moment that they had as a happy moment, but they have to have that initial moment in their mind in order to be able to move past some of that other other barriers. So do you have anything else, Inda?
I never thought, I never like to talk about like I have been bad at math since elementary school or something like that, because I know that some people were unlucky enough to have teachers that are not good in math, and that's why that bad experience made them feel that way. So I try not to talk about it, and I always said, okay, but you are here now at the present, so forget about everything that you have learned and just start newly from here. Forget about your hatred or your dislike of math or your bad experience, and just look as a freshman.
Yeah, so I realized that there's that can I sometimes I do that depending on how the student, I think the student will respond.
Yeah.
But I've also realized for some students, like not like acknowledging like, hey, like, oh, you really did have a bad math teacher in the past. Like sometimes if like I can get them to talk about it, then I can be like, well, you know what? Like when we get to that section, I'm not going to show that method of doing things. I'm going to show you something new, a different way of doing it. And so that's the only reason why I found like good reasons to like drag that out of them, is so that like if there's a method that they were taught in their past that they really struggle with, then I'm like, well, I'm not going to show you that way. I'm going to show you something different. And like you said, and to like just help you like start brand new and uh and then move forward from here. So that's good. Let me clear these then. So this is the next one. So I'll give you a as long as you need to read this one also, and then whatever you think about it, we'll talk about.
Actually, I have a students like this now, but now she stopped coming to class altogether. So I think she's giving up.
Yeah. So what if
I,
the student stops coming to class altogether? Yep, that's a good thing, maybe to at least make sure that we addresses something that might come up. I think that I would I would, like,
I did the call the name in class. What do you think? Do you have any suggestion, or do you object what your classmate said? So I'm trying to fish something from the students.
yeah, that's good. I think that something that I might do is maybe just remind the student that like I want to help them as best as I can, but you should you should try the problems for yourself so that that you can do them
Independently.
independently when I'm not here, or and then I might I don't know why I spelled remind incorrectly, but and then I think another thing I might say, or that I've done in the past, is um while students are working in groups, pull the student aside and ask them some like questions on an individual basis, because sometimes the students might not want to contribute to the entire, like the whole class discussion, but they like will
They will do it privately. Yeah.
or, and then even for that student, if the student is doing some good work on their paper, ask if they would be willing to uh, have their work shared with the like, even if it's like anonymously with the class, so that at least then it's acknowledged that at least it's acknowledged that they were doing the work, and then that could count as their participation in class, that they contributed something to the class discussion that the students could talk about, even if the person wasn't um, talking out loud. So I guess a better way might be to like give students an opportunity to participate in class in a non-verbal way, like just by showing their work, or rather than like having to talk about it.
Yeah. Participating doesn't mean you have to talk, right? If you cannot have the access to the audio, you can always write your answers, and it could be done to everybody or privately, and then I can say that one of your classmates is having this answer, blah 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 blah, and the rest can see that.
Yeah.
And also offering like extra points for participating in discussion.
Oh yeah, like I think that's like I think that's like one of these things where I like all of those, like ideas, like in terms of especially like just making sure that like because I think that students sometimes they might not want to participate because they don't realize that there are ways to participate without having to talk. Like they think that when we're asking them to participate that we really want them to talk, and sometimes that's not always the case. Like sometimes it's just like, anything you can contribute. Is there anything else you want to say, or are you like nodding your head, or like agreeing, or can you give me any reaction at all? Then those are things that I always like think
And
about. All right.
sometimes I try to solve a problem, but I solve it incorrectly.
Yep.
And then I pretended that it was correct, and I waited for somebody to tell me that it's incorrect.
Yeah. I like that technique also. Like what is the error? I do a lot of those. Actually, I put those on tests sometimes too. Instead of a test, like a regular test question, I tell them things like, this is how a student did this in the past. Like, can you find the error? And things like that.
I did that, and the students all answer. Everybody have the same answer. There is nothing wrong there.
Yeah, I guess that's always a possibility, unfortunately. But I'd say that these are some of the things that are given as strategies to what the AIBL workshops I went to have called melting the iceberg, or like getting rid of these underlying issues that might cause a student not to be as successful in a class. So these are some strategies, like using starter problems, coaching, creating positive learning environments, using reading assignments and reflective writing, and then tailoring the assessments and aligning them to the learning goals. So I guess I'll go through all of these one by one, and then have you add to the list, and we can talk about them, and then go from there. So starter problems are just, when we think of those, we want to focus on the fact that we want the problems not to be too difficult, that not every student can do them. And then remember that the instructor's role is to design the task, the order of the task, and the pacing. And of course, in the long run, we want to have problems that are at the right level for all students, and that might be varying levels of difficulty. It's okay to give answers or hints sometimes when a student is truly stuck, or if we feel like they really need that helping hand. And then there's never too easy of a question, because students always have to have that initial confidence that they were able to do a problem successfully. So what are your comments on this end, or questions or concerns, or do you have any specific starter problems that you like to use in your classes?
I cannot think of it, but yeah, I did that. And usually the one that talks much is the one that is always active, and then the rest would just listen. So
yeah, so I think that's where my one thing that I like to do for starter problems is like show a picture of like something that is relevant to the topic. And so if I go, let me see if I can bring it back up, because I know that I had it up earlier, and then I didn't say anything about it at the earlier at the time, because I knew we weren't on this part yet. But oh, there it was. Anyway, I'll wait for it. It's the visual thinking techniques or visual thinking strategies. And so I will take pictures that I've taken myself and then ask the students as a opening to a lesson, like, what do you see in the pictures? And then this particular one was taken at Dodger Stadium in LA. And then it actually, the reason why I put it in the chapter that it's in is because Dodger Stadium is right down the middle, symmetric, like, and so then they even have a scoreboard in left field and same size scoreboard in right field. They have a Waffle House even in the left field and a Waffle House in right field. So it's symmetric right down the middle. So I put it right in the section when I'm going to talk about like symmetry and even and odd functions. And then somebody always talks about the parabola, or somebody mentions the shadow. I usually have some students asking about what time of year it was taken, or what time of day it was taken. And you know what, like, I'm okay with those types of questions also, because as a chapter opener, there wasn't a right or a wrong answer. It was just like, what do you see in this? And my hope is that at least one student will say like symmetry, so that I can use it as a place to start talking about symmetry. But I do make every student say something, or every group say something about the picture. And so I have a whole lot of pictures that I took. They're all on my website actually, because I went to like a whole bunch of like math museums and workshops to try to get like pictures of things that people, actually this is not the best example, because I know that there are more pictures. And oh, but there is one though that I think is interesting, because it's of the golden spiral. And so at the Dolly Museum, there is actually, where is it? Because I know exactly where it's at. And yeah, so on the like garden walkway and by the museum, the spiral is in the pavement. And so I sort of like, when I'm talking about the Fibonacci sequence or anything like that, I bring up this picture as a discussion starter and ask the students like, what, do you see anything here? And so I found that these are very, very low stakes questions, and because they relate to everyday life, since they're pictures I've taken myself, that students like that, I guess. So so do you have anything else to add, Inda?
Not at this time.
All right. Yeah. And in any case, like, if you ever want to use any of the pictures, feel free to, and I can give you other suggestions of where to get pictures also, because I know if you go to the like the Smithsonian website, they have galleries of just math objects that you can use and as discussion starters and things like that. So the next thing is the coaching. So this is just like remembering that it's not cheerleading. And what we say as instructors really does have an impact, trying to get the students to show you what they tried, rather than just saying, well, you know, like, try again, go and figure it out. Like, well, show me what you've already tried. Because students will expect us to be responsive to them when they ask for help, but that doesn't mean that we have to do the work for them. So we just have to do all of these things as a coach, like listen, guide, advise, give hints, give praise for persistence and experimentation. And so there's like a general outline of what you could say in terms of like coaching students and helping them along, like reminding them again that being stuck is okay, and that your job is to do the thinking, like you said, into like the critical thinking is important to stress to the students. And then just another thing that students actually like sort of respond to sometimes really well is, you know, like just good question. Like, I want to help you as best as I can, and so can you show me what you tried first, so that we have something to start with and we can go from there? Or can you give me some ideas of how you're going to do better in the future at this topic, and what are some things that you know you should practice, and let's make a list together. So what are some maybe techniques or strategies or things that you say to your students? And
sometimes if they have if they are stuck somewhere, then I will say, do you still remember what the goal here is? Okay, so what do you think in the next step for that goal? Let's say they are trying to solve an equation. Okay, what is the aim when we are solving equation? Okay, isolate the variable. So how do we do that? And then they usually try to do something. And even though when their suggestion is incorrect, I try to follow it, and then they will see that, oh, that wasn't good. And then, okay, it's not working, so that must be something wrong here. Let's go back and see what happened. So sometimes I like them better when they make mistake, because then it will stick with them more if you are making mistake at the first time, right? So
yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, I think let me see, I was going to like list a couple of other ones here that that might be good things that I was trying to, but all of a sudden, like there it was. My file became very hard to read, and I wasn't sure why it was this way. So yeah, I think another thing that might be good is like just start the coaching from the first day. And so just start
and
from
also
day
if a
one.
student asks for a hint, it is good if we can offer it to another student. Okay, class, what do you think? Can anybody help? Give a hint. So
Yeah,
we wait until everybody are giving up or stuck before we really help.
has a hint to share. Yeah, I think that's great. And actually, I think that's like helps the students realize that they're all in it, they're all in it together. So that's that community building. I think that there's a lot of ways to go about the um the first day of class activities, but one activity that has sometimes gone really well in terms of being the coach, and so as a coach you have to a lot of times like remind the students that the that practice is important, because I don't think that's really in here yet, like that it wasn't captured on here yet, that about the practice piece is the coach, and so an activity for day one could be have students talk to each other about a hobby and how they became good at it, and how practice was required to do so. So if you can relate the idea of that they have to practice, right, back to also having to practice for a math class, then I think that they sometimes are more willing to be open to the idea of I have to practice, I have to get the answer on my own, and then just always emphasize that growth mindset. So continue to emphasize, and I can't spell, so I don't think I can spell that today. I'm telling you, like, to so just continue to remind students about growth mindset. So like I think that these are all good, and I think that the key sometimes I think is the more we can do toward the beginning of the semester, the better. And I think that it is easy to have the class go off track, but when it goes off track, it's hard to get back. And so now I'll tell you that I'll admit that I had one class this semester that I thought was going to go off track, and it did at first. And the way I brought them back is through those self-assessments, because I start reading their self-assessments after the first couple of weeks. And then when I start reading them, I'm like, well, you know what? Like, I see what they're telling me and what they're learning and what they're struggling with. And so I started like tailoring the lectures to the things that they were struggling with, and the application problems that they wanted to hear about. And so I feel like then they started paying attention a little bit more, because they realize, hey, I'm not just doing sticking to the script of the handout. And then when they were hearing things that they wanted to know about, then they were like they actually have been more willing to like do the other work on their own outside of class without me even telling them, because I told them, well, you know what, we've already talked about this topic, so I'm not covering these pages in the handouts, but we did cover it, and you have to review the notes and apply it to finish filling out the handouts on your own, or you have to watch the videos online, or work through it with your group members. And so I realize that one of the things that has helped is just to be flexible. And if I did like get the group to come back together when I realized, you know what, like the handouts just aren't going to work for this group. So I'm going to try something different, and then it worked. So I think that this is an interesting phrase here, though, is instead of like sage on the stage or guide on the side, like the term mentor in the middle. And so just trying to be that coach or mentor to the students in the small groups, and then realizing that, well, you might not be talking or giving direct instruction as much later on in the term, which, like I said, like even with the differential equation students, I had them do the presentations earlier this week, and they did the presentations and I didn't do a single thing, and they were encouraging each other in the chat, and I was thoroughly impressed. And so visit the groups to see how they're thinking and how they learn. And again, that there's that flexibility component in there, in adjusting the lessons throughout the semester, encouraging that productive struggle or the idea that mistakes are okay, and in allowing students to develop the ideas on their own, but giving them the time to think about it. And so I do think that that time of here's that minute to even think before you go to your small groups is helpful. Like even with the Kahoots, I give the students the problems in advance, and then they have time to work on them individually or in a small group. And then we do the Kahoot together, so that I know that all the students have had time to think about the problems before I just say, here, time to enter the answer. And then like the other strategy, like when I say encourage groups to be active when asked, like I will walk over to quiet groups and remind them about the task to talk about a certain problem. And then maybe after groups have shared out, encourage like students to like give a like I usually say a round of applause, or like whatever it is, to just let the students know that their work was appreciated in the class. So let students know each other's work is appreciated in the class, or and ideas, not just the work, but their ideas and thoughts. And then where was it? Yeah, when you visit the groups, maybe just ask quiet students in a group, can you show me what you tried, or can you share that great idea with your group members? So what are some things that you do, Inda, that would help with this positive learning environment?
I'm doing it. I'm just
oh,
when you are asked like this, I've tried to remember what I did in class, but somehow I just couldn't remember. But it's similar to what you have.
Yeah, I think that it's
So when we were still on ground, I walk a lot to my students, and that's something that we are not going to do sooner, right? Even when we are going back to ground, I don't think I will walk around and face my students in a close proximity. So, but usually they are more open up when they feel that they can talk with us without anybody else listening. So not to the whole class. So a personal connection is important for them.
yeah, without being in front of
Yeah.
the whole class, and the personal connection is important. Yes, absolutely. And so that this is actually the goes along with that. Yeah, the importance of like visiting the group. So so I think that there's still that way um to do that sometimes. Like I know that I do know some people who are teaching on campus at other colleges, and they have the students keep their distance, but they have the students like have a whiteboard, a small whiteboard, and they hold their answers up
Mm-hmm.
so that the instructor doesn't have to get as close.
Yeah.
So you have students hold up answers on whiteboards, or maybe I think another thing is the like allow some some chances for maybe anonymous feedback, so that it's sort of, well, let's just take a quick anonymous poll, or uh, like of do you think yes or no, and that could be done in a Kahoot or something
Yeah.
where students,
Clicker.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that those are all really good things. And I feel like that might be one of the strategies that I use when we go back to campus, is still using some of these on the technology components in class, because I don't want to get as close to them, but I do want them to be able to still like have that opportunity to be open and talk with me. And so right now, like I was trying to get at earlier, is that I do ask students the first few minutes of class, like, how are you doing? And some of them actually will put in the chat with a direct message the same sort of things like I would get in an in-person class, like, hey, like I have to leave the Zoom class early today because I have to go to, like, pick somebody up, or I have to go do this, or things that a student would come up to me before class and usually tell me. Or in those breakout rooms, like I said, they'll be talking about their chemistry class or physics class, and if they get off topic, at least they feel like it's a safe environment to do that in. And so I don't really like think that it will be too big of a problem to do this when we go back to campus, but I think it will have to be done differently. So, well, of course it will be. So, let's see.
And we
So,
have to think about students that are introvert as well, because they are really struggling if they are put on the spot. So that's something that we have to be able to recognize, not to make students that are introvert to be like a center of an attention, because they are not going to feel safe in that kind of.
and actually, Enda, that was a great thing for this slide. So, the be aware of introverts in the class. So the reading assignments and reflective writing are good for these students, because it gives them the time to think about the, like, what they've read and reflect without the like what it says here, actually, without the being in the public class setting. So I think these allow for some anonymous like feedback, because not all students are, because the ideas don't have to be shared with all students. It's just between the instructor and the student who is writing it, unless the student agrees to have the work shared. But like sometimes having reading assignments or reflective writing assignments outside class are good things, because the attitudes and beliefs that we have are it says here, like very deep inside of us or deep within us. And so those are all of those like past experiences of the elementary school teacher who did something bad or whatever that might cause us to or anyone to maybe not want to speak up in class. So some readings that could be assigned are about problem solving and productive failure, or assigning a student to write a math autobiography about their math story, and writing about examples of productive failure that they've had in class, or watching videos on productive failures and writing some things that they learned, or just some open times to write and read individually. So like I know that I did this in a small way by excuse me, asking students to read and then reflect on a theorem or definition, or reflect in a weekly self-assessment. And so what are some like sort of maybe reading or assignments or reflective writing assignments that you've used, in or questions or comments you have about this sort of method in a class?
I usually just give them problem that is incorrect and they have to write, or I ask them to explain. Okay, let's say that we are going to solve this problem. I do not want you to solve this problem, but I would like you to write down how are you going to explain how to solve this problem to your classmates. So that's kind of thing.
Explain a problem without solving it.
Yeah.
Like, and actually I did that with my differential equations class for homework. Like one of the homework assignments is this weekend, actually, we were talking about solutions of differential equation by substitutions, and I hate how all of the problems in the book have like it gives us suggested substitution, like let u equal t minus 1, or, and so I gave them some homework problems. I said, all right, here's the equation, and then I want you to pick a substitution, like come up with a substitution and explain why you picked it. And I didn't actually tell them what the substitution was. I told them not to solve it. I just said, I want you to come up with a good substitution on your own and explain why you picked it. So I think that's great. And like I know that that let's see, like there are lots of things that go along with the reflective, right? I was thinking about what other times I've used reading assignments in reflective writing assignments in a class. I think that it could be even something as simple as ask students to write down what they learned, or a question or concern they had as an exit ticket from class. Like just ask them to reflect really quickly before the end of the class, like write down what your biggest takeaway from the class was, or if there's something that you didn't understand, just write it down. And then I've had students create the library fair poster projects about like either a famous mathematician or a topic in the class, etc. Or one was innovation in mathematics, and they just had to pick something that would connect the mathematics and from the class to their everyday life. And that was the reflective piece. Like if they could make the connection of how they were connecting what we learned in class to everyday life, then that's all I wanted. So make connections between in-class learning and everyday life. So these are all things where I think that it helps. All right, let's go on to the next one then. Now I'll say that this is the last piece of that, melting the iceberg diagram, and then it's a lot of things we've already mentioned, like taking off points for mistakes is inconsistent with our message, grading homework for process and effort, but not necessarily accuracy, having some ungraded assignments, and then now when I say ungraded assignments, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have to, so doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have to do it, because I do know that I do, for some of my classes, consider this requiring an 80% or higher on an ungraded practice quiz before the quiz can be taken. And so now I'll tell you that my strategy this semester is actually went one step farther than that. Into what I've now have done is I've also said I've done require a 100% on a practice quiz before a student can retake a quiz. So I've actually have decided that if a student wants to try to retake a quiz, I really want them to, but I want them to show me that they're not going do something to show me they're not going to make the same mistakes as the first time they took the quiz, and that's by doing the 100% of the practice quiz. And I'll tell you that this semester I had one lady, she did the practice assignment in my open math. She did the practice assignment, one problem, she did 100 attempts at it. And I never thought that a student would get to 100 attempts. and not get a question right. But she did that one problem 100 times. And then she emailed me and said, so will you still let me retake the quiz, even though I didn't get 100% on the practice quiz? And I said, absolutely not. I said, like, I'll give you more time, like another attempt on the practice quiz even, but before you submit this last attempt, I really want you to think about your answer and check it with me. And I realized that she was not like writing down her work on a piece of paper. And so she was misreading the problem every single time. Now, the fact that she did it 100 times, I never would have imagined that, but it's one of these things where, yeah, I'm not requiring the practice quiz, but if you want.
But her grade is really good. So she was trying 100 times. So it's well, for me, I will give her point for doing 100 times, because that means she's really trying or not. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I didn't want, like, I really wanted the student to like realize that, like, I didn't really care about, like, if she, even if she would have actually explained the problem to me correctly, but then I would have realized that she had entered the answer incorrectly 100 times, then I would have felt differently. But then she told me what she put, and then I realized she wasn't showing her work, and that's what the issue was. So, so I think that the idea of reading and writing about productive failure and making sure that we align the assessments to the learning outcomes that we value the most is very important. And so I really don't cover as many topics like in class anymore. I cover interesting things in class, like applications, and give them a chance to work on their own or in groups. And then I let them sort of discover the rest of it on their own. And I've realized that the more interesting I make the actual class sessions, they just decide they want to show up for the most part on their own. And I don't follow, I have the handouts, but I don't follow them very strictly anymore. So I guess that's my biggest sort of.
But what if you cannot finish with all the materials? Because if we have a department final exam, the students have to be able to learn the whole thing, right? If we allow them to study by themselves and not checking them, and then turn out that they are only good in the things that we discuss in class, but not really with the others, then what will happen to them?
So this is actually the thing that I'll say that I will say is probably the most important part to me, is align assessments to the learning outcomes you value. So I'll give you my tip, and it's that I know that I talk a lot in class, and I know I talk too much probably. And I know that if I didn't talk as much, that I would have more time for group work or cover more material or whatever it is. But I usually reserve the last 2 weeks of class for things that I know I need to cover, but I don't care as much about them, or things I know I need to cover that are on the final exam, and I ran out of time for a certain topic or whatever it is. And so in those last week and a half, 2 weeks, I go through the practice final exam, and I do two things. One is I like about 4 weeks or so before the final exam, I give the students the like worked out solutions to the practice final exam, and I tell them it's I can even show you one of them, and because I know that the I don't actually, wait a second, where is it? Because I know that it is right, I have it right here, and it's one of these things where excuse me, where I just flat out tell the students, hey, like I might not get to everything. So if there's something on this final exam review that you think that I haven't covered, that you can't figure out on your own from reading through these solutions and trying to figure out this concept on your own, then ask me during these final 2 weeks. Or if it's a problem where I know that it's a topic I need to cover and I ran out of time on, I'll just do all of that, like 4 or 5 problems for them in class and give them a mini lecture on the topic rather than a full lecture, because my thought is I don't like the idea of necessarily teaching to a test, but at the same time, like if it's only for 1 or 2 topics and they have a solid understanding of everything else, then a year from now they probably will have forgotten most of the lectures anyway. And if they have that that deeper understanding, that will never go away. So I just start focusing on the deeper understanding and saying like, hey, like because of all this critical thinking that we've been building in class, you are able to look at these solutions and piece together things that we haven't talked about together in class or went over in class on your own without my help. Like you don't need my help to do this, because you know how to do these things, because it's just an extension of like what you've already done. So I guess that's where I'm at now, and is just like I would rather like teach to the test on 1 or 2 problems, like or 1 or 2 topics even, than oh, here's what I was looking for actually. But this is sort of what, oh, I don't actually know if I'm gonna clear all of this. Then have it so that the students don't like get thorough or deeper understanding, but like all of these are for the college algebra or math 14-15 final practice, and it has all of the steps like worked out. And honestly, the reason why I typed them out or had them typed out is because then if the final, like if the practice final changes, it's usually just 1 or 2 problems or a certain number. Like, and then I can renumber them electronically without having to rewrite the whole document every semester, so I just match up when the new final review comes out. I match it up with the previous semesters, and then I just add in the new problems, or if there's a problem the previous semester where I realized there's a topic where the students didn't do well on the final exam, then I add extra explanation to my final review handout. So I have that as like this back of my pocket sort of strategy that I like I said, I feel so bad sometimes about teaching to the test, but at the same time, I've also realized that in the last couple of weeks of every semester, like the students are like they have papers due for their English class, papers due for their like psychology class, papers due for this and that and that, and they're not focused on learning like a lot of new material anyway. And so then if I'm giving them mini lectures on like targeted topics that we haven't covered or we didn't go in depth as much on, then that's easier for them to digest when they're already so busy anyway, you know? So like, I feel like that really, really helped. And so I know, like I said, that this isn't the best strategy, but I think that it can be, you know, it's something to consider. Like I'll say, like I said, I don't like, because specifically for us, since we have that curve or the scaling on the final exams anyway, like the departmental finals. If a student misses one problem, I'm not too concerned anyway, because they're going to get that scaling factor of the curve anyway. And so if there's one thing where they had a gap on, but they learn critical thinking skills, and they learned enough that they can like, or like take a positive attitude about math to their next class, then that's what I really want. So like, if they have a positive attitude about math when they've left my class, because they've gotten excited about polling questions, or they've like won at Jeopardy or at a Kahoot, or they like were able to help a group member with something, then I tell the students from day one, like, these are the things that are like are going to make you feel better about yourselves, and also going to help you to grow and learn, and then take skills that you can use in other math classes and in your future career. So that's I guess it. Well, do you have anything to add, Enda?
Yeah, I like this. If we can have that freedom, I mean, like not finishing everything, and as long as they are learning something, it will be a good thing. I just sometimes feel like I have to make sure that I finish the whole thing, otherwise I'll be in trouble. So
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. Like like I if that's why, like, I really do save like that last like couple of like week and a half, 2 weeks to like fill in any gaps I may have not had time to cover, or didn't cover as well, or whatever it is. Like it really is. That's why I'm always so much farther behind schedule than any other instructor, because
you always do. Yeah.
I'm always behind schedule, but I always finish everything. And that's why, because like I'm finishing like at least like 20%, like the last like 20% in the last like 2-3 weeks, because like it's not like an even split. I go very, very slow in the beginning, because I go over like the definitions for weeks, like 2-3 weeks or 4 weeks if needed, because I feel like that's the only way to put the students on the even playing field, because there's some students who come into the class, they don't have the prerequisite knowledge, they don't have the like the vocabulary skills they need. And so I don't want to mismatch the groups with one person too high and too low of a level, and they can't really collaborate as well as I would like them to. And so I start out with tasks at the beginning that are sort of like everyone can read the definitions together and tell us what you think it means. And you don't have to be right at this point, because we'll learn what it means together, but not today. Today, I just want to know, what do you think it means? And then we'll talk later about what it means. And so I spread that sort of thing out a lot, because I want to, I guess, just make sure that they all know that I'll slow down for them. I'll take the time for them. But as I'm doing this, though, like if there's a word that a student really doesn't know, and if I decide that I'm going to talk about it in class instead of like pull the student off to the side to explain it to them, then I will add in extra stuff that that even the strong students in the class might not know about, saying like, this is another place in a future math class you might take where the same idea might come up, or this is the origin of why this word became called the word that it is, or this is the person who invented this thing, or or these are some other ways that you could use this concept, so that it's more than just explaining the word. And it will help, I guess, like be something that it will be something that will answer the question that the weakest student would have, but also give that little extra that a stronger student would want to know about. So, like I think that there's a fine line, but that's also why I get so far off track.
Yeah.